My sister and Elle were kidnapped. Kidnappers let one go first. Brother chose her, endure. Fiancé hugged her, don't fear. All three ignored me. I stepped back, jumped off the cliff. The mountain wind scraped against my cheeks like a butcher's knife, while the mist churning from the depths of Eagle's Grief Gorge roiled upward like broth boiling over in a great cauldron. Hemp ropes bound my wrists behind me, cinched tight to the tree trunk. The coarse fibers had long since bitten into my flesh, blood seeping out to freeze my sleeves into a cold, damp stiffness. My fingertips had gone numb with cold, my ears filled with the screech of a thumb-thick blade being whetted against stone. Hurry it up! The officials will be here any minute. The bandit chief, a scar like a centipede crawling from the corner of his eye to his jaw, grabbed my little sister Liang Wanru by the scruff of her neck and dragged her half a step toward the cliff's edge, pressing his steel blade against her throat. I've brought the 1,000-tael gold draft. My elder brother Liang Zhongfu came charging up the mountain pass at a dead run, half his hairpin lost, sweat plastering his sideburns, his breath heaving like a broken bellows. My fiancé Pei Heng followed close behind, his jade belt pendant clanking against the rocky walls. His long sword was half drawn, his gaze fixed unblinking on the scar-faced man's blade. 2,000 taels, silver, all delivered to the carriage at the foot of the mountain. Pei Heng's voice trembled, his lips pressed into a bloodless line. The scar-faced man spat a thick glob of phlegm onto the parched grass. Cut the small talk with me. Of these two women, you can take only one. Liang Wanru's eyes reddened, tears spilling like broken beads from a snapped string, her voice cracking as she sobbed, Brother. Brother Heng. I'm scared. The ropes are cutting into my bones. She went limp, collapsing into the bandit's arms, her face drained white as quicklime. Liang Zhongfu's heel shifted half a step forward, his eyes fixed on Liang Wanru's raw, reddened wrists. He didn't spare so much as a glance in my direction, instead fumbling the gold draft from his robes and thrusting it forward. Save Wanru. She's the legitimate daughter of the Prime Minister, delicate constitution. She can't endure this kind of ordeal. Zhongfu. Look, Wanqing is over there too. Pei Heng caught Liang Zhongfu's arm, his brow knotting tight. My heart seized in a sudden vice. For 3 days I'd been locked in a pitch-black woodshed, given only half a bowl of rancid gruel, burning with fever. Pei Heng's words kindled a faint spark of hope in my chest. But then Pei Heng turned, and his gaze settled on Liang Wanru's tear-streaked face, and that spark died. Pei Heng's grip on Liang Zhongfu's arm slowly relaxed. He stepped forward instead, shrugging off his sable-lined cloak and holding it out. Choose Wanru. Wanqing grew up in the country estates, she's tough, she can hold out. Wanru in the hands of these cutthroats wouldn't last the time it takes to burn an incense stick. Wanqing, bear with it a little longer. Liang Zhongfu turned to me, his eyes skittering away from mine, his tone carrying the unthinking authority of command. Once we get Wanru somewhere safe, the troops will surround the mountain. The bandits will scatter on their own. You'll be fine. The corner of my mouth twitched. My cracked lips split open, and the iron tang of blood spread across my tongue. It had always been like this. When I was 8, the manor flooded, Liang Zhongfu held Liang Wanru with one hand and cradled his silk-wrapped cat with the other, leaving me stranded on the porch with water up to my chest. When I was 15, Pei Heng gave me a jade pendant as a betrothal token. Liang Wanru took a liking to it, and he pulled it straight from my neck, patting my shoulder and saying, You're the elder sister. Be generous. I looked at these two men, my brother and my intended, whom I had called family and love for over a decade. The hem of Liang Zhongfu's robe still carried the faint sweetness of pine nut candy he'd bought for Liang Wanru. Pei Heng's bosom still held the hand warmer Liang Wanru favored. Together, they lifted Liang Wanru from the scar-faced man's grasp. Pei Heng wrapped his sable cloak around her like swaddling a precious gem, cradling her close, murmuring over and over, Don't be afraid, it's over now, Brother Heng is here. Liang Wanru's sobs softened against his chest. In that moment, as she turned her head, she showed me, barely visible through the swirling mist, a thin, cold smile of triumph. Seeing the hostages reclaimed, the scar-faced man pocketed the draft and turned his venomous gaze on me. He raised his blade to strike at my neck. No use keeping her alive. A corpse will buy us time. The steel whined through the air, but I did not scream. I did not beg. In the woodshed, I had already used a shard of broken porcelain to cut through 2/3 of the ropes binding my wrists. I threw my arms apart with all my strength. Rip, the severed hemp lashed against the trunk, sending bark flying. I twisted sideways, dodging the fatal blow. My boots scraped loose at the cliff's edge, pebbles clattering down into the fathomless abyss. Liang Zhongfu and Pei Heng whirled at the noise. Wan Qing! What are you doing? Liang Zhongfu's eyes strained wide, his shout tearing from his throat. Liang Wan Qing! Don't move, that's a sheer drop. Pei Heng started to release Liang Wanru and rush toward me, but she let out a sudden shriek, clutching her chest and crumpling to the ground, her fingers locked tight around his trouser leg. Pei Heng's steps halted dead. He looked down to catch her, calling, Wanru. What's wrong? Watching this, the last ember of warmth in my heart froze solid. I lifted my gaze to the leaden storm clouds overhead, then to the impenetrable fog below. Liang Zhongfu. Pei Heng. My voice rasped like sandpaper on stone, cutting clear through the howling wind. Today you chose her. From this day forward, our bonds are severed, never to be mended. The words barely left my mouth before I drove my feet off the cliff edge and hurled myself, like a stone cut from its tether, straight down into the roiling depths of Eagle's Grief Gorge. Wan Qing! Liang Zhongfu's anguished roar was torn to shreds by the gale. The wind screamed past my ears like a pack of wild beasts. The speed of my fall was so fierce I could barely draw breath. Jutting rocks raked gashes across my cheeks, the cold air searing into the wounds. Just before blackness swallowed my sight, I fixed my gaze on 100-year-old pine jutting from the cliff face halfway down, and below it, the glint of water from an underground river. I thrust out my bloodied palms and grabbed for the pine branch. Crack! The thick bough shattered under the impact of my arms, the shock jarring through my shoulders and up into my skull, my right elbow giving a sickening pop. Agony lanced through me, black spots swimming before my eyes. The branch had slowed my fall just enough, and then I was plunging again into the darkness below. Plunge! Ice-cold water engulfed me from all sides, the brine of it flooding my nose and throat. The pressure crushed my chest like a boulder. Gritting my teeth against the searing pain in my right arm, I clawed with my left through the current. The underground river surged like a wild stampede, dragging me along a narrow stone channel, tumbling end over end. My head cracked against rock. Dizziness crashed over me, and then nothing. When I opened my eyes again, the bitter tang of medicinal herbs mixed with the smoky reek of burning mugwort filled my nostrils. I lay on a dry stone bed spread with sheepskin, the ceiling above a jagged karst cavern, 2 burning resin torches wedged into the walls. Don't move. 2 ribs cracked, right elbow fractured, just set it for you. A hoarse, aged voice came from the cave entrance. I turned my head. An old man in coarse hemp robes crouched by a charcoal brazier, his left sleeve tucked empty into his belt. With his right hand he worked a pair of iron tongs, tossing dried herbs into a bronze pot. A deep scar ran from his forehead to his temple, and his eyes gleamed sharp as a blade, no trace of the cloudiness of age. Thank you, Senior, for saving my life. I tried to rise and gasped as pain lanced through me. Lie still. He poured the medicinal brew into a coarse bowl and brought it over. I've been living in seclusion here at the bottom of Eagle's Grief Gorge for 20 years, you're the first person I've seen fall from that cliff and still draw breath. That embroidery on your hem, it's the Liang family crest. You're from the Prime Minister's household? I stared at the steaming bowl, my expression cooling. I am Liang Wanqing. But from the moment I leaped off that cliff, I have nothing to do with the Liang family. The old man's hand paused as he handed me the bowl. A glint of something flickered in his eyes. Liang Yuandao, the current prime minister, 30 years ago he was nothing but a minor clerk in the Ministry of Revenue. If it weren't for the Black Crow Battalion clearing his path in the shadows, he'd never have climbed as high as he did. At the words Black Crow Battalion, my heart missed a beat. That was the infamous secret intelligence agency of the previous dynasty, supposedly annihilated in the Great Purge 30 years ago. How did this old man know that name? Senior, could you be? I stared at his empty sleeve. The old man gave a cold laugh, pulling open his robe to reveal a fearsome black crow tattoo across his chest. I am Gu Tiancheng, former deputy commander of the Black Crow Battalion. When Liang Yuandao wanted to prove his loyalty to the new emperor, he sold out our entire battalion to the Court of Judicial Review. Over 100 of my brothers died without a proper burial. He pressed the bowl into my hands and continued, I've survived in hiding for 20 years, waiting for my chance. You've cast out from the Liang house, with that fire of defiance in your eyes, are you willing to learn what I have to teach? I raised the coarse bowl to my lips, the bitter smell of herbs stinging my nose. I drained it in one breath and wiped the dregs from my mouth. If it means making those who trampled on my bones pay, this life is yours, senior. Gu Tiancheng looked at me, a satisfied smile curling at the corner of his mouth. For the next 3 years, this dark underground cavern became my purgatory. At the first crow of the rooster each day, I would run along the slippery pebble banks of the underground river with 30 caddies of iron sand strapped to my legs. Gu Tiancheng's training was merciless, every move aimed at a vital point. The Black Crow Battalion's arts were all practicality, assassination, surveillance, bone reading, keen hearing. Beyond martial training, he entrusted me with what remained of the battalion's intelligence network across the realm. Every night, messengers would bring bamboo tubes of secret dispatches through the river's hidden passages. Salt taxes from Jiangnan, the whereabouts of Imperial silver in the capital, the Pei family's illicit northern iron mines, every incriminating ledger and official scandal was laid bare in those missives. I memorized them day after day, learning to brew false death potions, to use silver needles to simulate pulse patterns, to mimic any condition. The bone in my right arm healed completely under Gu Tiancheng's unique balm, growing even stronger than before. My once soft palms hardened with thick calluses. The timid softness had vanished from my eyes, replaced by the honed edge of a drawn blade. 3 years later, on a heavy snow day, Gu Tiancheng sat before the charcoal brazier, his cough worsening by the day. He pulled a black iron token from his robes, engraved with a spread-winged crow, and placed it heavily in my palm. Girl, I'm running out of oil. The 300 sworn warriors and 72 trading houses of the Black Crow Battalion in Jiangnan, from today, they answer to you. He clasped my hand, his fingers cold as ice. Liang Yuandao is old. The Pei family's star has risen through marriage with the Liangs in recent years. Go back to the capital, use the name Gu Qinglian. The identity of the chief proprietor of Jiangnan's largest trading house, Qinglian Pond, will let you shake the capital to its foundations. I gripped the heavy black iron token and kowtowed 3 times to Gu Tiancheng with the deepest reverence. After I buried the old man beside the river in the cavern, I changed into a clean set of male attire and made my way out through the downstream secret passages. When sunlight stunned my eyes again, I was standing on the official road outside the capital. A luxurious 4-horse carriage waited by the roadside. My Black Crow subordinates had already arrived. Master, news from the capital, Pei Heng and Liang Wanru's wedding is set for the 3rd of next month. The subordinate bowed low, presenting a gilt-edged invitation. The Liang and Pei families have booked the entire plum blossom garden for the ceremony, inviting half the court officials. I took the invitation, my fingers tracing the 2 names, Pei Heng and Liang Wanru, and a smile curved at the corners of my lips. For 3 years, they'd been living comfortably on my supposed bones. To the capital. I lifted the carriage curtain and settled inside, my voice calm as still water. And send a gift to Lord Pei, tell him the chief proprietor of Jiangnan's Qinglian Pond will arrive tomorrow to discuss salt and iron cooperation in person. The carriage wheels crushed the snow with a rhythmic crunch, rolling steadily toward the towering city gates. Icy wind whipped ice crystals against the carved window lattices of the Plum Blossom Garden Pavilion, a sharp tink-tink-tink sounding through the air. I sat in the most secluded alcove, dressed in a stone-blue gold-embroidered cloak, a veil of cicada wing thinness covering my face. A pot of freshly boiled snow-water Maojian tea sat before me, steam rising to blur my vision, though it couldn't obscure the clamor from the main hall beyond. Chief Proprietor Gu, that is Lord Pei Heng, Junior Magistrate of the Court of Judicial Review, and Lord Liang Zhongfu, Vice Minister of Revenue. The steward beside me spoke in a low voice, making the introductions. I tapped my teacup lightly. The clear clink of porcelain cut through the hall's noise. I raised my eyes to sweep coldly over these two all-too-familiar men. 3 years had carved deep creases around Pei Heng's eyes. His face bore the pallid cast of chronic sleeplessness. Liang Zhongfu wore his official third-rank robes, his hairpin cinched tight, every muscle taut as a drawn bowstring, his spirit drained, nothing of his former arrogance left. Liang Zhongfu stepped forward, his gaze fixed on my face, suspicion and unease warring in his eyes. Chief Proprietor Gu's voice. Sounds rather like an old acquaintance. You flatter me, Lord Liang. I pitched my voice lower, soft with a Jiangnan accent, but cold as shards of ice. This humble merchant was born in Suzhou, raised in Yangzhou. This is my first trip to the capital on business. You must be mistaking me for someone else. Pei Heng tugged Liang Zhongfu back, his voice sharp in reprimand. Zhongfu, mind your manners. Chief Proprietor Gu controls the salt and iron shipping routes for 6 Jiangnan provinces. The Ministry of Revenue's 3 million Tail River Conservancy funds depend on Qinglian Pon's cooperation. Don't offend him. Liang Zhongfu flushed, turning away with a snort, muttering under his breath, just a veiled merchant putting on airs. Just then, a rustle of skirts and the chime of jade pendants came from outside the pavilion. Liang Wanru entered, swathed in a goose-yellow embroidered gown and a fox-fur mantle, supported by 2 maids. Her wrists bore a pair of fine kingfisher jade bangles, her face painted with exquisite care, yet the restlessness in her eyes could not be fully concealed. Brother Heng. Brother. Why are you hiding in here? The ministers and nobles are waiting for you to toast them. She moved instinctively toward Pei Heng as she spoke. But Pei Heng stepped half a pace aside, avoiding her reaching hand. His brow was knit, his voice laced with barely concealed impatience. Wanru, Chief Proprietor Gu and I are discussing official business. What are you doing here? Go back to the inner courtyard. Liang Wanru's hand froze in midair, her face draining of color in an instant, her eyes shimmering with tears. Brother Heng. You never used to speak to me like this. Ever since Wanqing's accident 3 years ago, you've grown colder and colder. Are you blaming me? But he, my brother, he was the one who chose me. That struck a nerve. Liang Zhongfu whirled, slamming his palm down on the rosewood table beside him. The teacup toppled and shattered on the floor. Liang Wanru. Stop bringing up that day. If I hadn't had to scrape together that astronomical dowry for you, do you think I'd have had to cook the Ministry of Revenue's books? Now the censorate is breathing down my neck every day, and Pei Heng won't lift a finger to cover for me, and you have the nerve to cry about it? Liang Zhongfu. What nonsense are you spouting in front of Chief Proprietor Gu? Pei Heng's shout was sharp, veins standing out on his forehead. The ministry's deficit is from your own greed, gambling on those northern iron mines that turned out worthless. What does any of that have to do with Wanru? Stop slinging mud at your own sister. I'm slinging mud? Liang Zhongfu laughed bitterly, jabbing a finger at Liang Wanru. Who was it that let go of Wanqing's hand first on Eagle's Grief Gorge? You, Pei Heng. You were holding Wanru in your arms, you couldn't even spare a glance at Wanqing. And now you play the devoted man? 3 years you've burned paper offerings at that cliff every rainy day, do you think that will bring Wanqing back? She was picked clean by wolves long ago. Silence crashed down on the hall. Liang Wanru shrieked, clapping her hands over her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks, swaying on her feet. Pei Heng's fists were clenched so tight his knuckles shone white. His teeth ground together, but no words of rebuttal came. I sat quietly behind the gauze curtain, my slender fingers tracing the rim of my gilded teacup. Watching them tear at each other, trying to mask their guilt and fear with recriminations, I felt nothing but a deep, ice-cold contempt. Back then, they had cast me into the abyss. Now the shadow of that abyss had poisoned their marrow. My lords. I rose slowly, the hem of my cloak brushing softly against the chair leg. Today is a plum blossom viewing. I came to discuss business, not to mediate family quarrels. If Lord Liang and Lord Pei cannot find the time to discuss the salt and iron transfer, then Qinglian Pond will have to seek other partners for this 3 million tael contract. I turned, without another glance, and walked toward the door, my subordinate at my side. Chief Proprietor Gu, please wait. Pei Heng hurried after me, reaching for my sleeve. One of my black crow guards moved with a flash of cold steel, his blade half drawn, forcing Pei Heng back 3 steps. I paused, turning my head slightly, my voice calm and flat. Lord Pei, know your place. Some people, once lost, are lost forever. The dead don't come back, and the living shouldn't flatter themselves too much. Leaving the plum blossom garden, I stepped into my lacquered carriage. The subordinate reported in a low voice, Master, we've confirmed it. 3 years ago, Liang Zongfu embezzled 20,000 taels from the Ministry of Revenue to fund Liang Wanru's dowry, invested it in the Pei family's northern iron mines, which turned out to be worthless. He's hemorrhaging money. The ministry audit is imminent, he desperately needs a large sum to plug the hole. I lifted the carriage curtain to watch the snow whirling outside, a cold smile curving on my lips. Take those ledgers, Pei family's private iron mines, tax evasion records, and choose the most incriminating page. Find a way to drop it at Liang Zongfu's study door. My tone was flat, unhurried. Since they've already turned on each other, let's give them a little more fuel. The carriage wheels ground over frozen ruts, the gates of the Court of Judicial Review looming through the snow. Crash! Liang Zongfu slammed his fist down on the rosewood desk in his study, shattering the teacup, boiling water spilling everywhere. In his hand he clutched a thin sheet of mulberry paper, his forehead veins bulging, his face white as fresh-pulled silk. Where did this ledger come from? His voice shook violently, the corner of his eye twitching. The old steward before him trembled, gesturing toward the door crack. Young master, I found it just now when sweeping the corridor, it was slipped under the door. I don't know which reckless servant dropped it. The mulberry paper detailed the Pei family's private iron mines and 30,000 taels of evaded taxes, and at the bottom, Pei Heng's personal seal. This was precisely the money Liang Zongfu had embezzled 3 years ago. Liang Zongfu drew a sharp, ragged breath. The revenue inspector would arrive in 3 days. If he couldn't cover that 20,000 tael hole, not just his official position but his whole family would be thrown into prison. And this ledger, this was the knife that would drag Pei Heng down with him. At the same time, on the second floor of Huichang Exchange in the Western Market. I sat on a sandalwood couch, incense smoke curling around me, watching the commotion unfolding in the street below. A dozen wagons carrying Pei family's official salt had been blocked at the crossroads by patrol officers. Long spears pierced the neat stacks of hemp sacks. White salt spilled across the ground, and among it, chunks of contraband coarse salt. Officers! We've been wronged. This is official salt from Jiangnan's Qinglian Pond, all paperwork is in order. The Pei family's salt foreman knelt in the mud, forehead pounding the ground, blood smearing the stones. The lead investigator sneered, kicking the man aside. Qinglian Pond issued a notice yesterday, they've cut all ties with your Pei family. These contraband seals are counterfeit. Evidence is airtight, seize the wagons and men, take them to the Court of Judicial Review. The crowd buzzed like a stirred hornet's nest. Behind me, my subordinate reported quietly, Master, Qinglian Pond has cut off the Pei family's salt supply entirely. Their 100,000 tael goods in Jiangnan are all impounded. Old Master Pei is bedridden with rage, Pei Heng is scrambling to raise funds to pay the fines. And Liang Zongfu? I raised my cup, blowing lightly at the floating tea leaves. He took the incriminating page to Pei Heng, demanded 50,000 taels within 3 days to cover the ministry deficit, threatening to take the ledger to the censorate otherwise. I smiled, setting down my cup. Pei Heng hasn't got that kind of money. The Pei family's been bleeding capital for years, bleeding dry by Liang Wanru's extravagance. Exactly. Forced to sell off the Pei family's ancestral estate, 3,000 acres of farmland and 5 apothecaries. He presented a deed. Our people, posing as wealthy outsiders, have already negotiated the lowest price to buy everything. Half an hour later, in a private room at the Listening to Tea Pavilion in the east of the city. The air was stifling. Pei Heng, in plain black robes and a bamboo hat, sat haggard-faced across from Liang Zongfu, whose eyes were bloodshot as a mad dog's. Pei Heng! This is the deadline! Liang Zongfu roared, spittle spraying. 50,000 taels, not a copper less. The revenue inspector arrives the day after tomorrow. If I go down, you're coming with me. Pei Heng clenched his fists, veins standing out, disgust and regret darkening his gaze. He pulled a thick stack of property deeds from his robes and slapped them on the table. The last of the Pei family's assets, 3,000 acres of farmland and apothecary deeds. Mortgaged at Huichang Exchange, they'll fetch 60,000. Take them and plug your hole. Liang Zongfu snatched the deeds, checking them eagerly, a twisted grin spreading across his face. Wasn't that simple? We're in the same boat, no need to make it ugly. Liang Zongfu. Pei Heng's voice came cold as stones dredged from a frozen well. Take your money and hand over that ledger. From this day forward, the Pei family has nothing to do with your Liang family. And Wanru, I've had enough. Liang Zongfu paused, sneering, what, having regrets? 3 years ago at Eagle's Grief Gorge, you didn't hesitate to throw Wanqing over for Wanru. Now that things are going south, you want to pin everything on Wanru? If Wanqing could see what a coward you've become, she'd be laughing from the grave. Shut up! Pei Heng shot to his feet, kicking his stool over, eyes blazing. You don't get to say Wanqing's name. You were the one shouting to save Wanru. You were the one who let go of Wanqing's hand first. Liang Zongfu roared back. They stood there, two beasts tearing at each other in the narrow room, each accusation laced with the rot of guilt and the stink of lies. Through the hidden wall of the adjacent room, I listened to every word. Master, Huichang is in place, my subordinate murmured. The Pei ancestral property has been bought at the lowest price, 30,000 taels. And as for the silver Liang Zongfu is using to cover the deficit. We've made a small adjustment to the serial numbers on the official treasury notes. I smiled, cold, sharp, final. Using money from selling ancestral property to cover state funds was already damning. Altering the serial numbers turned it into outright forgery, and the evidence would be laid before the emperor and the censorate. Let's go. I straightened my stone blue cloak. The main act is about to begin. Tomorrow's court session, I will strip the Liang and Pei families of their last shield. Stepping out into the sparse snowfall, the ice crystals stung against my cheeks. At the Liang family manor, Liang Wanru was tearing Pei Heng's silks and satins to shreds, sobbing, servants in chaos. She had no idea that the pampered life she'd schemed for 3 years was about to shatter as the two men who upheld it tore each other apart. The fire in the Court of Judicial Review's side hall burned hot, crackling and popping, the air thick with sandalwood and the smell of damp earth. It's impossible. Absolutely impossible. Liang Zongfu's eyes were wild as he hurled the case files to the floor, paper scattering everywhere. He jabbed a trembling finger at the kneeling figure before him. The man on his knees was the bandit chief from Eagle's Grief Gorge 3 years ago, now in ragged prison garb, heavy iron shackles on his wrists and ankles, his forehead battered raw from kowtowing on the stone floor. Pei Heng stood ashen-faced, swaying, his hand gripping his sword hilt so hard the knuckles showed bone-white. Scarface Lu, this is the court of judicial review. You will not spout slander. It was you who kidnapped the Prime Minister's 2 daughters. Now you dare claim someone put you up to it? Scarface Lu drew a yellowed slip of paper from his tattered sleeve and raised it above his head. I swear before heaven, my lords, I never planned that abduction on my own. It was the young lady of the Prime Minister's household, Liang Wanru, who sent her personal maid with 3,000 taels and her private seal, ordering me to stage the whole thing. A thunderclap of silence. Liang Zhongfu lunged forward, grabbing Scarface Lu by the collar, spittle flying in his face. Liar. Wanru was only 16. She was kind-hearted, couldn't bear to step on an ant. How could she have hired cutthroats like you? If your lordship doesn't believe me, I still have the token the maid gave me. Scarface Lu produced a white jade pendant carved with twin fish, slapping it on the stone floor. Engraved on the back is the character Wan. The maid's orders were clear: force Liang Wanqing to the brink, kill her if possible, or at least ruin her reputation. As for Liang Wanru, a few scratches and a crying performance would suffice. Pei Heng stared at the pendant as though struck by lightning. He had given that very pendant to Liang Wanru on her 18th birthday. He would recognize it anywhere. What did you say? Pei Heng's voice cracked, his lips trembling. You're saying the whole thing 3 years ago, it was all planned by her? Exactly. Scarface Lu bared his teeth. She was afraid Liang Wanqing would inherit the Jiangnan family estates, and jealous of her engagement to your lordship. So she devised this poison scheme: kill 2 birds with 1 stone. The script on the cliff, you can only take 1, that was the maid's prearranged line too. A piercing shriek from outside the hall. Liang Wanru burst through the door in a thin silk gown, her skirts hiked up, hair in disarray. She skidded to a halt at the sight of Scarface Lu and the pendant on the floor. The blood drained from her face in an instant. Brother Hung. Don't listen to this convict. He's lying. Tears spilled down her cheeks, her body shaking like a leaf in the wind as she threw herself at Pei Heng's sleeve. It's Liang Wanqing, she's not dead, is she? She's framing me. This is all her doing. Shut up. Pei Heng swung his arm, his palm connected with Liang Wanru's face with a sharp crack. She crumpled to the floor, her hairpin lost, hair tumbling wild, blood trickling from her split lip. Framing you? Pei Heng's eyes were bloodshot, his voice cracking with rage and self-loathing. This pendant, I carved it and gave it to you. No one else in the world could have handed it to a bandit. 3 years ago, you wept and wailed on that cliff, said you were scared, said your heart hurt, told me to choose you, and it was all an act? Liang Zhongfu sagged into his chair, boneless. He stared at the hysterical Liang Wanru, then at the documents scattered across the floor. The light in his eyes guttered and died, replaced by something wild. For your inheritance. For your dowry. Liang Zhongfu threw his head back and laughed, a raw, ragged sound. I embezzled 20,000 taels from the ministry for you. I drove my own sister off a cliff for you. I ruined the Liang and Pei families for you. Liang Wanru, you viper, you've destroyed us all. He lunged, his hands closing around his sister's throat. Liang Wanru clawed at his arms, choking, her eyes rolling back. Brother. Let go. I'm your sister. You're no sister, you're a demon sent to destroy us. Liang Zhongfu's grip tightened. Pei Heng stood coldly by, making no move to intervene. His rage had curdled into despair, then ash. Watching the two of them, these siblings tearing at each other like mad dogs, he could only see the shadow from 3 years ago, the quiet, unyielding figure who had stepped off the cliff without a word. We were all fools, Pei Heng whispered, a single tear tracing down his cheek. We killed the truest, purest soul who loved us, all for a poisonous snake. Behind a carved wooden screen, I stood in shadow. Through the slats, I watched Liang Zhongfu's frenzied grip, Liang Wanru's crawling pleas, Pei Heng's hollow emptiness. No ripple of emotion stirred within me, only a cold sense of closure. They had handed me despair. Now I returned it in full measure. The subordinate leaned close. "Master, the Chief Justice and the censorate have arrived at the front gate. All evidence is ready: Liang Zhongfu's embezzlement, Pei Heng's illicit mines, and Liang Wanru's murder-for-hire scheme. Let's go." I turned, my stone blue cloak cutting a clean arc through the air. The climax is here. Time for me to take my bow. From the side hall came Liang Wanru shrieking and Liang Zhongfu's curses, echoing through the cold corridors of the Court of Judicial Review. "Majesty, attend!" The 16 bailiffs in the main hall struck their staves against the floor in unison, a low, resonant boom that shook dust from the rafters. Beneath the black lacquered plaque bearing the words "Mirror of Justice," the Chief Justice of the Court of Judicial Review and the Vice Censor sat shoulder to shoulder, faces stern and grave. Below, Liang Zhongfu, disheveled and slouched on the floor. Pei Heng, ashen-faced, his official robes crumpled. Liang Wanru, hair in disarray, dark finger marks still visible on her neck, crouching in a corner, shivering. Summon Gu Qinglian, chief proprietor of Jiangnan's Qinglian Pond, to the court. The bailiff's chant echoed down the colonnade. I walked up the white stone steps in my stone blue gold embroidered cloak, each footstep striking the flagstones like a hammer on the hearts of the three kneeling before me. This humble woman, Gu Qinglian, greets the magistrates. I paused at the center of the hall, hands folded, making a slight bow. Liang Zhongfu raised his swollen eyes to fix on my veiled face, his voice hoarse as sand. "Chief Proprietor Gu. You've been pulling the strings all along, haven't you? Who are you? What grudge do you bear against the Liang family?" Pei Heng turned slowly, eyes red-rimmed, fists clenched in his sleeves. Before the eyes of the entire court, I lifted my slender fingers and untied the white silk ribbon at my cloak. With a soft pull, the knot came loose. I raised my hand and drew the cicada wing veil from my face. The dim candlelight caught the pale pink scar at my temple, the mark left by the pine branch in Eagle's Grief Gorge 3 years ago. Liang Zhongfu's eyes stretched wide until they seemed to split at the corners. He scrambled backward on hands and feet like a man seeing a ghost, slamming into the vermilion pillar with a dull thud. "W. Wanqing? You're Wanqing? You didn't die? Wanqing?" Pei Heng crashed to his knees on the hard blue bricks with a sickening crack, staring at my face. Tears burst from his eyes. "You're alive. You're truly alive." Liang Wanru shrieked, her eyes rolling back as she nearly fainted. I looked down at them, my gaze cold as the snows of Eagle's Grief Gorge. "Lord Liang, Lord Pei, all those times you burned paper offerings for me at the cliff these 3 years, did you ever imagine I'd be standing here today, in the Court of Judicial Review, to settle this blood debt? Wanqing. I'm your brother." Liang Zhongfu crawled toward me, reaching for my skirts, only to be kicked back by the black crow guard at my side. He sprawled on the stone floor, wailing. "I was wrong. I was blinded by that viper Liang Wanru. I'll give you all the family property, just save me. Plead for me." "Wanqing." Pei Heng crawled to within 3 feet of me and struck his forehead against the cold stone, splitting the skin, blood flowing. "I wronged you, I was a fool. I'll resign my post, take you back to Jiangnan, I'll spend the rest of my life making amends, just tell me you forgive me." A cold smile touched my lips. I didn't even blink. I drew from my sleeve a thick stack of gilt-edged ledgers and red-sealed letters, raising them above my head. I present to the Chief Justice and the Vice Censor complete evidence of Vice Minister Liang Zhongfu's embezzlement of 20,000 taels of state silver and forgery of treasury records. Detailed accounts of Junior Magistrate Pei Heng's private iron mines and evasion of 30,000 taels in taxes. And proof of Liang Wanru's conspiracy to murder her elder sister through hired bandits. The Chief Justice struck the gavel. "Present the evidence." Bailiffs rushed the documents to the high bench. The two magistrates opened the ledgers, their faces darkened with each page. The gavel struck again, the sound silencing the entire hall. Evidence conclusive. The Chief Justice's voice rang out, Liang Zhongfu, Vice Minister of Revenue, embezzlement of treasury funds, stripped of office, property confiscated, banished to Ningguda for life, never to return to the capital. Pei Heng, Junior Magistrate of the Court of Judicial Review, private mining and smuggling, dismissed from office, 50 strokes of the staff, imprisoned for 10 years. Liang Wanru, conspiracy to murder, sentenced by strangulation, execution to be carried out after the autumn assizes. The verdict fell. From below came Liang Wanru's piercing shrieks as the bailiffs dragged her, clawing at the stones, toward the cells. Liang Zhongfu crumpled, muttering, "It's over. All over." Pei Heng, forced down to receive his strokes, raised his head with all his remaining strength to look at me. Tears mingled with blood from his forehead. Wan Qing. If there is a next life. I cut him off, my voice cold as frost, Lord Pei. There is no next life. In this one, we are settled. I turned. I didn't spare another glance at the weeping, regretful wretches before me. I straightened my stone-blue gold-embroidered cloak and stepped out of the Court of Judicial Review. Sunlight, warm and long denied, broke through the years of gloom and fell across my shoulders. Outside the gates, my 4-horse carriage waited. Before it, 300 Black Crow warriors and the heads of 72 Jiangnan trading houses knelt in perfect unison, their voices rising like thunder. Welcome, Chief Proprietor. The Jiangnan salt and iron routes are fully prepared. We await your command. I lifted the carriage curtain and stepped aboard. Looking back, the soaring gates of the capital and the shadowed court buildings shrank into the distance. The nightmare of Eagle's Grief Gorge and 3 years of hatred, in this moment, they dissolved to ash. Inside the warm carriage, I drew out the Black Iron Crow token. With a flick of my wrist, I cast it into the river below. From this day forward, there was no more wrong second miss of the Prime Minister's household, Liang Wanqing. There was only Gu Qinglian, mistress of Jiangnan's trade routes, peerless and unbound. The carriage rolled on, carrying me toward the open road and the bright south, vanishing into the horizon. The story is now complete. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe and support me.